Born to shake this ass. Born to clap these cheeks. Wait. Is that right? Did I get it right? Uh... Um... uh... All these beautiful booties, right? Shake it. Shake it. Country girl, shake it for me, girl. Shake it. Got a little room in my big truck. Gonna open up the doors and turn it up. Gonna stop my boots in the Georgia mud. Gonna. Enough of that. Here we go. Here we go. Wait. There we go. It'd be easier to properly position a green screen if I wasn't such a large man. Big head. Big and beautiful. That's me. You went to that festival? You got a bloomin' onion? Isn't a bloomin' onion just something special? I don't know if I've ever seen anybody, I know I haven't done it, actually eat an entire bloomin' onion. I feel like after you eat about a third of it, or maybe half of it, you're just like regretting all of your life decisions, but honestly, those first several bites are just unreal. That makes me want to go to Texas Roadhouse. Texas Roadhouse here gets so busy. We tried to go on a random weeknight, and they were like, it's going to be a 45-minute wait. I'm like, the bloomin' onion. The blooming onion. Hold on, I have to cover this for people who might not know what that is, because we have some people who don't live in America and who don't eat like they have free health care. Some of you might be scratching your head, and what the fuck is a blooming onion? I'll show you. The blooming onion. You take a big onion and you dice it, but not entirely. You leave the bottom part together so that it kind of forms this bloom, and then you dip it all in a batter. It's like a seasoned frying batter, and then you deep fry the whole thing, and this is what you get. You get the bloomin' onion. I look at this and I see beauty, but I look at this and I also see us stepping one step further away from the light of the Lord. It's delicious. What makes you regret your life? Oh, absolutely. This is one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, this is really good. But you can feel like every little petal you eat off of this bloomin' onion probably takes 10 seconds off your life. Hey, babe. You're looking cute today. My You know, if you have half of it, it does hold up decently well if you have an air fryer. You can revive it in an air fryer. But if you've never had anything like it, it's very American. The type of onion they use is they normally will use like a Vidalia onion, like a sweet onion. So it's like it's more like a big onion. Pretty big onion. Tried to make a bloomin' onion in the air fryer once. Yeah, I don't know if you like. I feel like it needs to be deep fried in its initial conception, but I feel like after it's been deep fried, you can revive it in a deep fryer. But that's one of the things that deep fryers are really good at. They're really good at revitalizing fried food, so you don't have to fry it again. If you were to put a bloomin' onion on a plate and then hand it to a European, I think they might just instantly expire. I feel like this would be if you traveled back in time and you gave a bloomin' onion to a child in the Middle Ages, it might kill them. Deep fried Oreos sounds insane. Oh, that's only scratching the surface of the deep fried stuff you can get at the fairs here in Missouri. Deep fried Oreos, those I've actually made at home. We did it on stream. It was when Jamie was living here, and Jamie really was into deep fried Oreos at the fair, and so we're like, let's make them at home. It's like a pancake batter. Which, if you're European, I guess I would say it's like almost like a waffle batter. You know what waffles are. It's a slightly thicker crepe batter. If you're really European. Hello, Casey sent us. Did she say that you needed therapy? She said, go to therapy. We were talking about the deep fried foods that you can get at the fairs here in Missouri because it's fair season. Deep fried Oreos are a staple. They've been around for a while. I'm John Law was telling me about something called deep fried ranch that I've never heard of before. It's apparently like ranch dressing mixed with like cream cheese or something. And then it's breaded and fried. I've also seen deep fried Pepsi. I don't even know how that works. But yeah, at the county fair or at like your local state fair, you'll see all kinds of stuff like that. You'll see 10 booths that look like this. Let's see what they've got. They've got fried chocolate chip cookie dough, deep fried Snickers, Milky Way, Reese's, Oreos, fried Pepsi. How is that even possible? We found a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. You ever seen deep fried ranch? I haven't heard of that either. Let's see if there's a... Let's see if there's a... Okay. 23 iconic fair food recipes. 25 deep... Yeah, 25 deep fried foods from the Texas State Fair. We love a good deep frying here in the United States. Deep fried bubble gum. It's actually bubblegum flavored marshmallows. Okay, that's a little bit better, I guess. For a second, I thought it was actually bubblegum. No, deep fried butter. Frozen balls of butter, battered and fried and served with sauce. This sounds like a war crime. This sounds like it violates the Geneva Convention. You're shocked by these? To be fair, you can't get this kind of stuff year-round. This is just the kind of, like, novelty, like, weird stuff that they will serve at our... Like, we have fairs all across the country. There could be, like, a state fair or, like, a county fair. You see them all over the place. They have, like, carnival rides and deep-fried foods and all sorts of stuff. Deep-fried butter. Apparently it just tastes like toast. Deep-fried beer. Oh. How'd they make that happen? How'd they do that? The beer is poured into little ravioli pockets. This should be illegal. This should be illegal. I feel my cholesterol count going up just looking at these pictures. Peanut butter banana cheeseburgers. Deep fried Coke. Chicken fried bacon. Bacon that is breaded like a chicken tender and then fried. That sounds kind of good. It sounds really salty, but it also sounds really good. This one I would eat. All of these other ones, I'm like, this sounds like it could be something special. Okay. Some of these pictures won't load. This one's jelly beans. It's deep fried jelly beans. Unfortunately, there's no picture. Apparently, it's just batter with jelly beans mixed into it. Deep fried Cadbury cream eggs. Don't show this to anybody from the UK. Are you from the UK? Close your eyes. I don't want to break your heart about what we're doing to your Cadbury eggs. Just look at this monstrosity. Deep fried pizza. An actual full-ass slice of pizza that is breaded and fried. Deep fried Kool-Aid. The French fry coated hot dog. This is just a Korean corn dog, but without the finesse. Deep fried pecan pie. I have to pronounce it pecan because it's in the South and that's how they say it down there. You can't go calling it a pecan. That's how they'll spot an outsider. If you go to Texas and you say pecan pie, they shoot you on sight. That's actually a thing. Gotta say, give me a slice of that pecan pie. Deep fried latte. I'm at a loss for words at some of these pictures. Okay. Deep fried PB&J. Now I know this goes hard. I know this goes hard. This actually looks pretty good. We should go to one of these fairs and try these foods on stream. I wish we could, but the unfortunate thing about fairs is that they're always in the middle of nowhere, and they're always crowded with people. And so you never really get good cell service out there. We've tried to stream the fair a couple times, and it just doesn't really work. One time we went to the fair, and we just ended up doing like a GoPro video. Deep fried salsa? Salsa mixed with masa, which is like a corn flour type thing. Corn. And then rolled and crushed tortilla chips before frying. Sounds kind of good. That sounds kind of good. Deep fried Pop-Tarts. I don't think that a European has the mental connections to actually fully process what they see when I show them a deep fried Pop-Tart, because the existence of a Pop-Tart itself is outlandish to a European. Whenever we had European exchange students come to the United States and they would try our snack foods or they would eat like Pop-Tarts or stuff, they would be like, this is disgusting. This is disgusting. And then just the idea of like deep frying it would, I feel like it would just cause them to short circuit. They just couldn't handle this. Deep fried margarita? All right, get me out of here. Get me out of here. I've seen enough. It's a funnel cake batter made with margarita mixer, soaked and fried in more margarita. Or fried and then soaked in more margarita, all served in a margarita. Okay. Deep fried club salad. Deep fried s'mores. Deep fried pumpkin pie. Some of these are abominations, but some of these actually look edible. Deep fried potato salad. Deep fried cheesecake. Now, I've had deep fried cheesecake, not even at the fair. I had it at a Japanese restaurant. They had these like it was like it was rolled up and had like a raspberry sauce, and it's really good. This one I can vouch for. Deep fried Oreos, that's a staple. Oh yeah, because if you've had an Oreo, you're like, oh yeah, crunchy cookie, creamy center. But whenever you deep fry the Oreo, since the inside basically just gets all steamed, it makes it so that the Oreo cookie is soft, and so the whole bite is just like, it's crunchy on the outside from the fry coating, but then it's just like soft in the middle. It's like biting into a creamy chocolate pancake. It's nice. Deep fried guacamole. Now hear me out. I would eat it. I would eat it. But I also feel like it should be illegal. I would eat it, but I don't think I'd be proud. I don't think I'd be proud of myself. Deep fried Frito pie. Alright, so the Frito pie, for my Europeans, if you're unfamiliar with the Frito pie, I like a good Frito pie. It's Fritos, topped with chili, cheese, and it's delicious. Some people actually make it into dinner, apparently. But I had no idea people were deep frying this. Nothing about this says, you know what I should do? I should deep fry this. It's already terrible for you.
The partnership with Shiba has given Kuleana...
What the fuck was that? Okay, get that out of here. I don't know what's going on there. Anyway, so it's fair season, and Americans like to eat like they have free healthcare. Making crab cakes for dinner? Nice. Nice. Nice sweater. Thank you. Thank you. I put on a thermal today. So, the first submission to the question box was a link to this news article from 1991. And I'm not sure what they were trying to tell me when they sent me this. Do I take this as a threat? Should I be concerned? Heart failure killed man who feared curse. A man found dead in unusual circumstances last month after expressing fear he was the target of a witch's curse died of heart failure. Like, are the witches after me? I hope I haven't done anything to upset the witches. I feel like I go to great lengths to stay in their good graces. I mean, if I have done something wrong, I hope that I can atone. I'm not out to get cursed or hexed. Christopher Case, 35, had told friends he feared he was under a witch's curse. The cause of death was acute myocarditis. Myocarditis? They died of heart failure. They found his clothed body in the waterless tub of his apartment. The former radio broadcaster. Oh. I can see a radio broadcaster being the target of a hex. Some of the things these radio broadcasters get up to. Case told his friend, the woman that reported his death, that a witch had cast a spell on him because he would not return her affections. There is no sign of a crime, no sign of violence, robbery, or foul play. About 10 burned down candles and crucifixes were found by investigating officers in Case's apartment, and lines of salt had been poured along the base of the apartment's walls. Another Fayetteville woman, a psychic and a teacher who was a friend of Case, said he expressed his fear to her in several phone calls a few days before his body was found. I'm wondering why someone sent me this, or is this do I take this, am I just supposed to be entertained by this, or am I supposed to take this as some sort of warning? Am I being warned here? Do I need to tread lightly? I just hope I haven't upset any witches. I don't need any covens after me. Anybody willing to cast a protection spell for your boy? I'd really appreciate it. If anybody could just cast a little protective spell, I'd really appreciate it. Just in case. Just in case. Anyway. How are you feeling today? How you feeling? Feeling satisfied? Nice. Nice. Content? Not bad. It's a good place to be. I'm feeling kind of satisfied. I watched an hour-long video. It was like a Cities Skylines 2 tutorial because I'm like, why do my cities keep crashing out? And then I needed to learn how to play the game. Apparently, some city planners actually use the video game Cities Skylines 2 in helping them plan actual cities. The game is that in-depth that you can plan an actual city based around it. Which makes it's interesting because it's also marketed as a game, but it makes me feel like I'm playing around an AutoCAD or something. But no, it's fun. The city we started last night, the city of Beaverton. It's popping off. We just hit the small city threshold. We got about like 40,000 people. Beaverton, yeah, he's the mayor. He's the mayor of the town. Feeling happy? Do you mind sharing it with the group? If you're feeling good today, just feel free to share it with the group. Just, did you bring enough for the class? Anyway. No, I was just wondering how he died simply by believing in a curse. That's crazy to me. Whew. What a relief. What a relief. For a second there, I thought I was about to get cursed. If anything, this really speaks to the power of belief. Based on all of the experiences I've had, all of the different encounters I've had with different people from all different walks of life, and all of the different ways that, you know, mental health or physical health symptoms will manifest, I believe that there is power in belief. I feel like people drive themselves crazy. But I also feel like people can drive themselves sane. I feel like people can also because this is actually something that's been proven, people can manifest physical symptoms, we call them psychosomatic symptoms, just from their own beliefs, their own thinking. Just look at the placebo effect, for example. You can give somebody a pill that does nothing, but you tell them it's going to help them, and they'll be like, you know what, I do feel better. There are some cases of people dying from manic episodes. Yeah, like running in a manic episode, that's like when you're in a car and you are revving and that little line that shows the RPMs on your engine, it starts to go into the red. Like you are running at a high rev. You're really burning it at both ends. Quark Charm, thank you for the 18 months. That puts you about a year and a half. You probably unlocked a new brain. Probably loss of sleep too, affecting the central nervous system. Absolutely. Sleep is essential for you to live. Something cool, if you haven't heard this, about what sleep does for us, because there's still some, mystery there as far as what sleep really does within our brains and why we need it. When you sleep, your brain waves, which, when you talk about brain waves, we're just talking about the electrical activity that's on in your brain. You have electrical activity in your brain your entire life. If your brain turns off, you are technically dead. So whenever you are sleeping, your brain goes down into these low and slow, these undulating brain waves, delta waves. And what these delta waves do is they move back and forth through your brain while you're sleeping. If you imagine the day you had, all of your memories, all of your emotions, and you picture it as like a landscape, the delta waves would be like wind and water kind of moving across that landscape, kind of softening some of those edges and just making things, more neat and more cohesive. And this is why when you're like practicing a skill, sometimes you have to like sleep on it and then try it again in the morning, and you'll be able to do that skill that you might not have been able to do the day before. And it's because sleep allowed your brain to clear out some of that clutter, some of that thing that was just some of the stuff that was distracting you from your ability to focus on that new skill. Pretty cool, huh? Is there a way to heal and make the brain healthy again after what might have been 30 years of torture and isolation? Can't sleep without nightmares? I believe there is a way. The brain has a remarkable ability to heal. And we can speed up this healing process by doing it consciously, by being an active participant in it. And we do this by things like reframing. We change the way we think by, looking at things a little bit differently. We open ourselves up to new ways of thinking, new avenues of thinking, and we form new neural pathways in doing so. So the brain can change, and it's changing all the time. But it changes more, and it can change in a specific direction when we play an active participant in that process. And so in healing, there's going to be a lot of letting things go. That's a really important part of healing, because part of what holds us back and part of what keeps us in these cycles of, trauma or guilt or shame or whatever it might be that you're dealing with is we're still trying to process the things that have happened to us. And what we need to do is figure out, okay, how long do I need to hold on to these things? What can I let go? What am I working towards letting go? My therapist failed me and no one supports me. It's in those moments where it really reaffirms that in life we have to be our own biggest support. We can't make it without the support of other people as well. But in those times when we feel like I've got nobody to lean on, it's like I'm the one that I've got to lean on. I'm the one who's got to steer this ship. And if I want to get to calmer waters, it's going to have to be through my effort, through my dedication, through my persistence. Persistence is one of the most important things, because mental change takes time, and if you don't have that persistence, it can be easy to just lose hope and give up, but you gotta keep going. How do I sit with my anxiety without spiraling or hyper-focusing on it? It's like I can do other things without fixating on it or just constantly body scanning for different symptoms. When it comes to changing your relationship with your anxiety, because that's kind of what it is. That's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to change the relationship that we have with our anxiety. Because anxiety has been with you since you were born, and it will be with you until the day that you aren't alive anymore. Because anxiety is an integral part of our brain, and it is something that we need to be able to function. Anxiety is a tool of our brain that allows us to scan our surroundings for potential harm. And so, in essence, it is meant to be there to protect us. Now, what ends up happening for a lot of people is because of some of the experiences we may have had, maybe we have had to deal with trauma or really stressful situations, that sensitivity to potential danger gets amped up, and we can start to feel like we're really struggling with this anxiety because we've got this think of it almost like a radar system. We're thinking and we're planning and we're looking, it's too finely tuned. It's too sensitive. And so what we want to do is we want to work with our anxiety rather than feel like we're having to work against our anxiety. And so we need to change that relationship that we have with it. And so the example that I like to give, or the analogy that I like to use when it comes to changing the relationship you have with your anxiety, think of your mind, your consciousness, think of it like a house. Think of it like a house, and you're sitting in that house. Now, anxiety kind of exists a little bit outside of what we would refer to as our conscious mind, and so it's kind of outside the house. Anxiety, it comes knocking at your door. It's trying to get your attention. It's got urgency. It's trying to make you feel like you need to pay attention to this because we could be in danger. And so anxiety will pound on your door. And if it can't get in through the door, it'll start tapping on the windows. It'll try the back door. It'll try to find a way in because it feels like it's got an important message to give you. And so what many of us do, because this is the sort of reflex we have, is, well, if anxiety's knocking at the door, I'm just going to try to forget that it's there. I'm just going to wait until it goes away. I'm just going to sit on the couch and turn up the TV and try to drown out the sound of anxiety knocking. But you and I both know that that isn't really going to do much because anxiety is persistent. It may calm down, but it's really not going to go away unless we can change our relationship with it. So when you talk about sitting with your anxiety, when anxiety comes knocking at your door, let it in. Say, how can I help you? What can I do for you? And just listen to it. You don't need to allow it to influence your feelings, and this is something that you can achieve with practice. It might be difficult in the beginning because anxiety can be very demanding. But when we start viewing anxiety a little bit differently, and we start working on changing our relationship with it, what we can realize is that anxiety is basically just an oversensitive danger scanner that exists within our brain. And so we want to welcome it in, and we want to sit with it, and we want to say, how can I help you? and we just want to watch it. We just want to observe it. Allow it to process. Try to view it as if it belongs to someone else. You try to be just an impartial observer to your anxiety. Try to look at your anxiety as if it's someone else's anxiety. Because one of the things that we are really good at is when other people come to us with a problem, or other people come to us and say, oh, I'm worried about this, we might have a much easier time saying, oh, don't worry about it, there's no way that's going to happen. It's a lot easier for us to, tell other people who are feeling anxious, you got nothing to worry about, than it is to tell ourselves, you got nothing to worry about. And so you have to try to teach yourself to be that person for you. Does that make sense? And if anxiety barges in and it's really demanding and it starts to feel overwhelming, the only thing you have to do is breathe. Just breathe. Focusing on your breath. It's a technique known as biofeedback. Your body is what gives the signals to your mind about how it is currently feeling right now. If your breathing is really, you're breathing at a quick rate, like you're anxious, you're like, you're breathing rapidly. It makes your heart beat faster. Your heart has to beat faster to keep up with the agitated breathing. But if you can slow your breathing and try to have it as relaxed as possible, it'll slow your heart rate. And then it sends those signals to your brain and says, oh, I am feeling pretty relaxed, and it will start to relax you. So in those moments where anxiety feels overwhelming, just breathe. Just breathe through it. Wait it out like a storm. Just wait for that storm to pass. It just takes some practice, but you can change the relationship that you have with your anxiety. Because just try to remember, your anxiety is trying to help you. Your anxiety is trying to help you. In the same way that, like, when you're doing a task around the house, like if you have children and you're doing something, it's like having a toddler around and the toddler's trying to help you. You're, sitting there and you're doing something, the toddler comes up and it hands you something that's just completely unrelated, or it's messy or it's sticky, and you're just like, oh, thank you. And they're like, I'm helping. Because anxiety is generated in a pretty primitive part of our brain. It's generated in the cerebellum, which is down here towards the bottom. And it's a very, primal, primitive part of our brain. But it responds well to calm breathing. It's a very grug part of our brain. It says, oh, I'm breathing in a calm way. Maybe I actually am calm. Because it looks to the body to help it to determine how to feel. I feel like part of the struggle that people have with dealing with their anxiety is they try to push it out. They try to make it leave. They try to make it go away. It's just going to come back. It's just going to start making more noise. It's going to start kicking and screaming. It's going to throw a temper tantrum. Let it in. Watch it. And then watch it leave. That's the really important part, is by just observing your anxiety, you watch it as it fades. You say, oh, okay. And I feel like this is why anxiety is the most frequently reported type of mental distress that people deal with, is anxiety. It's number one by a large margin. And I feel like part of that is because our instinct is when anxiety is here, I need to try to outrun it, I need to push it out, I need to get rid of it. But in reality, the only way to get better at handling anxiety or to change your relationship with your anxiety is to let it in. And just see what it's here for. Because what you'll notice is that the part of your brain that produces the feeling of anxiety is a different part of your brain from the part of your brain that is aware that you're having anxiety. And what you want to do is you want to have that part of your brain that is aware, just have that part of your brain watch your anxiety. Just approach it with a sense of curiosity. Like, what are you doing here? What can I do for you? How can I help you? It's like, well, I need to do this, and if I don't do it by this time, I'm gonna, things are gonna be terrible. It's like, okay, I could see why that would be stressful. What can we do about that? Let me just say, it is possible. It just takes some practice. Probably less practice than you would even think. If you could ask an all-knowing being 3 questions about the world or the universe and were guaranteed to get an answer, what 3 questions would you ask? I would probably use up my first question asking this all-knowing force what other 2 questions I should ask. I would sacrifice one of my questions so that this all-knowing being could tell me the best 2 questions that I could ask it. And I don't know what those are. They would have to tell me. Is that cheating? That's what I think that's what I would do, though. Like, I could be satisfied with having 2 questions, and I would know that they were exactly the best 2 questions that I could possibly ask because this all-knowing being told me that they were the best ones. But only you know what you want to know, right? Not if it's an all-knowing being. If it's an all-knowing being, they probably know better than I do. So I ask the Almighty, I say, hey, what 2 questions should I ask? And he says, you should ask me what you order for lunch. And you should ask for a recommendation on a new pillow. You should, like, what should I get for lunch? What pillow is the best pillow? But you risk wasting that question if there is no best question. Then I guess that isn't really wasted because then I know that it's up to me to decide, and so I'm okay with that. Like, who killed John F. Kennedy? What was inside the suitcase on the movie Pulp Fiction? How much did my biggest poop weigh? Thoughts on Rexulti? I feel better with it, but I've gained a lot of weight and feel a compulsion to eat and have a hard time stopping once I start. I saw my doctor this morning and she reduced my dosage, but I'm not sure how I feel about it. I guess just curious, your non-prescriber thoughts on this as an add-on therapy for depression. I'm not sure it's worth it, even though it does help. Alright, let me just add a disclaimer here. You know, I'm not a prescriber and I'm not gonna make any recommendations to anybody. You're just asking for my thoughts, and I will share my thoughts with you. Let me see. Okay, Rexulti is a brand name, so let me see what the actual Rexaprazole antidepressant. What type of antidepressant? I wonder what mechanisms it works through. My thoughts, I'm just gonna, not even so much speak to this medication. I'm just gonna speak to how I feel about most psychotropic medications. And I feel like the point of taking a medication for a mental condition is to help you do the work that you need to do to get your brain functioning at a level that works for you. Does that make sense? For example, if you're dealing with a lot of anxiety, or you're dealing with the depression, or you're dealing with other symptoms, taking a medication can help to take the edge off. It can help to clear the fog, and it can make it easier to do things like process my traumas, or reframe my thinking, or learn new coping skills, reconnect with my social supports, all of the things that you might need to do that would give you a better, more well-rounded mental state can be aided by taking that medication. Some people take medication for many years. Some people start taking a medication, then take it for the rest of their life. I'm not going to tell you whether that's right or wrong, because I feel like that would be me abusing my position. I'm not going to tell anybody that's right or wrong. You know you better than I know you, so go with what feels right for you. That being said, I do feel like many people start taking a medication. For example, I'll give an example. He's a friend of mine, and he started taking antidepressants when he was like a teenager, and now we're in like our mid-30s, and he's still taking this antidepressant, and I'm like, do you still need to be taking it? Because antidepressants are one of those things where it's like, let me talk about antidepressants specifically for a moment, because I do have a little bit of a beef with them. The thing about antidepressants is that they don't make you feel happier. They just make you feel less burdened by your sadness. You just don't care about it as much. And so you're like, well, I guess I could get out of bed. I guess I could go to work. I don't feel too burdened with my emotions. In my experience, and this is also the experience that many people have shared with me, is that antidepressants just kind of make you feel numb to your emotions. That being said, some people just need to be numbed for a while. But allow that mental state to allow you to do the work that you need to do, process the things you need to process. So I feel like when it comes to medications like the one you're talking about, which is not a traditional antidepressant, it's an atypical antidepressant. It's actually, meant to treat some other symptoms. I would say if it's helping you, good. If you feel like if it's affecting your eating, there are things you can do about that. Your doctor also reduced your dosage, and so I would just say, see how that makes you feel. In regards to your mental state. Because if you feel like it's not giving you what you need for the sake of your mental state, then maybe look at changing the dosage back. But what I would say is there are a lot of medications out there that cause people to gain weight and it affects their eating. And in those types of cases, it makes it even more important that you start behavioral changes to sort of push back against that. You know, just going for walks, maybe even going to the gym, just getting some exercise, maybe setting up a dietary plan for yourself. You know, when you go to the grocery store, it's like, I don't need to get potato chips, I don't need to get Hot Pockets, I don't need to get anything that's going to be like stuff that I'm going to binge. This is going to be combated with behavioral change because a lot of medications, especially mental health medications, do cause people to gain weight. And part of that is because in some cases it makes people just have more of an appetite. In some cases it makes people want to eat more. In some cases it makes people kind of like retain water, but it varies depending on the medication. And so I would just say, just keep that dialogue open with your doctor. It sounds like you got a good connection with your doctor, and that is worth its weight in gold. You know, having a good relationship with your provider is so critical. Just being able to even talk about lowering your dose, and then they're like, okay, I respect that. Because I've met doctors who are very reluctant or very hesitant to lower anybody's dosage. I bet a lot of doctors who are of the mindset that we'll start you off at the smallest dose and then we just ramp up from there. And so I've met many people who are prescribed heavy duty doses of multiple medications because you're prescribed one thing and then you're prescribed another thing to help you with the symptoms that you were feeling from that other thing you started taking, and next thing you know, you're taking 5 things. And so I would say find a healthy balance with you and your medication, because your mental wellness is more important than how much you weigh. It's more important than any of those things. And there are things you can do to kind of push back against that. The medications, you know, let them do their thing. And then you do your thing. And so if you feel like, you know, I'm gaining weight and it's changing my behavior with food, that can be changed. And you can have an influence on that. And you can, it doesn't have to be that way forever. Because not everybody who takes these types of medications gains weight. A lot of people do. A lot of people do gain weight when they start taking these types of medications, but not everyone does. And so I would just say, just start pushing back against that by implementing healthy habits. And guess what? By implementing those healthy habits, you will also improve your mental wellness. You know, healthy diet, healthy exercise, that also helps your mind. Oh, anyway. That's how I feel. That's how I feel. I don't ever want to be here and tell anybody, you know, stop taking your meds, because I feel like that's just grossly irresponsible of me to say. I would say that is a decision that is up to you and your doctor. And so, yeah. Just try to keep working on building that motivation to implement more healthy habits. Because even aside from, like, initially it might start as a, you know, a way to combat the weight gain that you might have gained from this prescription, but in time those will just become more of your routine, and then next thing you know, it's like, I've got a healthier routine, I've got a better diet, I've got more exercise. It's a win. And so I would just try to view it that way. The medication is actually kind of incentivizing you to incorporate some healthier habits in life. Yes, yes, mindfulness is everything. Mindfulness is your biggest ally. Mindfulness is your best friend. One of the things that we did at one of the mental health facilities I worked at is we had like a gym. We had a place where people could go and work out and exercise, and even people who had gained a lot of weight through their medications were able to get into better shape by just having regular healthy levels of exercise and by monitoring their diet. And so you might still gain a little bit of weight, but you might not gain as much weight, and maybe if anyway, you get what I'm trying to say. How do I get good? This is the $1 million question. By having a willingness to learn from your mistakes. A lot of people look at their failures or their mistakes and they just try to close that chapter. They just try to forget that it ever happened. But if you want to have more success in life, you have to be able to learn from your mistakes, because you learn more from your mistakes than you do from your victories. Because for all we know, a victory could be due in part to your skill and your own prowess, but it could have also been circumstantial. It could have also just been blind luck. We don't know. There's only so much to learn from those instances. But it's from those times where we end up short. We're able to really learn from those. It's like, what can I do differently next time? I would just say to try to break free from that mindset of like, oh, I can only win. Some people are, and I'm not saying that you have this, but this is something that I've noticed, especially in like men aged like, late teens, early 20s, they have this mindset of like, I cannot ever acknowledge defeat. I can only win. If I lose, I am a loser. So I would just say be willing to try new things, adopt new strategies. If you just go into every situation and you just try the same thing that you tried the last time, you can't really expect the results to be any different. Just like fighting a boss in a Souls game. If you don't adapt, if you don't learn from what went wrong, you're never going to beat that boss. You were going to try a free app and start working out again? I think that's a great idea. If you are planning to start working out again, take a day before you even start like really getting into working out and just stretch. Just take a day to like prepare your body for this new level of physical activity. And then you could also maybe do something like go for a little walk, just do some light activity, because one of the mistakes that people will often make whenever they are trying to adopt a fitness routine is they go into it really motivated, and then they go really hard at the gym, and then they feel tired and sore and exhausted, and they don't go back. I don't know who needs to hear this, but stretching is also a form of exercise. Stretching is my favorite form of exercise. You're just gonna jump back on your bike for an hour on your route, but I'm right. Also, here's another thing. Lower those expectations. If you're planning for going for an hour, don't go for an hour. Go for a half an hour. If you're planning on going for a half an hour, go for 10 minutes. Go for a lower amount, and then if you, at that point, reassess. Do I want to go further? There's a reason for this. It feels more satisfying to set a goal and then exceed it than it does to barely meet it. Does that make sense? So let's say you're going to go for an hour and you're able to go for an hour, but you're really pushing yourself. You'll get a certain level of satisfaction by doing that, but the satisfaction will also be outweighed by the exhaustion that you feel. Now, let's say you set a different goal, you set a little bit of a lower goal and say, I'm going to do it for about 20 minutes. And then at 20 minutes, reassess. Could I do 5 more minutes? Could I do 10 more minutes? By exceeding a goal, you actually feel more incentivized, you feel more encouraged, and you feel more satisfied than you do if you barely meet your goal. So that's what I do at the gym. Whenever I'm trying to work out, I'm like, all right, I'm trying to, set a new, or maybe I'm just working on one of the machines, or I'm lifting weights or something. I'm like, all right, how many reps am I going to do? Let's do 5. And then I do 5, and I'm like, I can do 10. Let's do 10. I don't start off by saying, let's do 10. And this is something that people who regularly exercise, or they're trying to build muscle or, get fit, this is something that they do. You focus more on repetition, but low rep counts, but then you just do more sets. So instead of doing 1 set of 15, you do 3 sets of 5. How's my hand feeling today? You want to see it? You want to see it? It's crusty. Did you ever fall off your bike as a kid and just fuck your knee up? Kind of looks like that. What happened? I took a tumble off of the scooter and I scraped my hand up on the sidewalk. Will the beaver be gracing us with his presence anytime soon? Yeah, I'll go try to find him. I'll go try to find him at some point. Maybe I'll get up and go make some more coffee, or get up and go to the bathroom. I'll go try to find him. The thing is he's just gotten too big. He likes to lay on my desk, but he's too big to fit up here now. So is the scab firmer and shrinking? Yeah, but then as I stretch my hand back out, it'll crack and then reform. But yeah, it is shrinking and it's very hard. It's kind of itchy. But yeah, it's healing. I've been keeping it clean. I'll rinse it with peroxide a couple times a day. Sometimes I'll put some A&D ointment on there just to moisten it up a little bit. I also have this lidocaine spray that's got aloe vera in it, and I'll spray that on there. But yeah, it's right on that main crease in my hand. I have those creases in your palm. It's right on that main crease, and that spot along the main crease, it's like a little canyon. It's actually kind of interesting to like watch the body's healing process. It's kind of morbidly fascinating in its own way. Sometimes I'll just find myself like looking at it, I'm like, interesting. Contraindicated? Now that's a word. Peroxide for wounds is no good. So the issue with hydrogen peroxide is that it also kills the new tissue that's forming. Good to know. I've mostly been putting it on there because there's like cracks in it. And it's like, I don't know what's living down in that crevasse. Just trying to flush it out. Like most of it isn't open. It's mostly just the surface. But there's a part of it that's like crack. Like get it in there, clean it out. Do you have advice? Oh, I've got advice. See, I love giving advice, but I don't like giving advice unless it's asked for. And whenever you directly ask for advice, I'm like, I got free reign. Let's go ahead. Let's go for it. Do you have advice for getting back into the groove of things you should be doing, even if you don't want to? First off, my advice, eliminate the word should from your vocab in this instance. Get the word should out of here. Why? Because we don't want to should ourselves. We don't want to should our pants. The reason why we don't want to use the word should is it is a way of judging ourselves. When we say I should be doing something, what we're really saying is, it would be good if I did that thing, but since I'm not doing that thing, I am failing. And so one of the big things that we talk about in mental health is don't should yourself. Instead, reframe it in other ways. I would like to do this. It would be good for me if I did this. I should do this for these I just said should. I want to do this for these reasons. See, it's hard. It's hard to forget the word should. But you can see how it implies a certain level of judgment against ourselves, and that's not really what we need to be doing. Anyway, let's continue. I've been unemployed for a bit because I got laid off, and there are hobbies and things I need to be doing to save myself from spiraling, because doing nothing is a huge cause for that to happen. I don't want what I love to turn into feeling like labor. That's a big one. A lot of people recommend, like, if you love doing it, make a job out of it, but then I'm of the mindset where it's like, if I had to do like art as a job, it's like I don't want it to ruin art for me, because I feel like there is also some validity in like, okay, maybe you want to make money doing what you love, but also you kind of don't want to spoil that for yourself. I'm the questioner. Hey, how's it going, friend? All right, so advice for getting back into the groove of things. You probably have a mental to-do list. And whenever we have a mental to-do list, it is something that's going to overwhelm us because our brain isn't very good at handling that many things at once. And so what I always recommend to people is if you have multiple goals that you're trying to work on, pick one. And then within that goal, identify the first step for you of that goal. So, since you're here, let's pick a goal. What's a goal that you need to do? And what would the first step of that goal be? If you're having a hard time identifying that first step, I am happy to help. But this is why we do this. It might feel like I need to get all of these goals done, because if I don't, I'm disappointing myself. I'm short selling myself if I'm not getting all of these goals done. You will. You will get those goals done, but you're not going to get them all done if you're focused on all of them right now. You got to pick one. So we pick one goal, and then we identify the first step of that goal, and then we do that thing. And then after we do that thing, we say, see, I can do it. I am making progress. We got to hype ourselves up. This is what allows us to get motivation and momentum. So don't spread yourself too thin. Oh, absolutely. That's like trying to learn how to juggle, and you're like, I'm going to learn how to juggle. I'm going to start with 8 balls. Like, no, if you want to learn how to juggle, you have to start with 1 ball. And then you have to get good at juggling 1 ball before you can even think about doing 2. This is self-efficacy, right? Yes, absolutely. Good point. The reason why, after we achieve part of our goal, we want to reflect on it and say, you know, we want to be nice to ourselves and we want to reflect on our own capabilities is because it builds self-efficacy. For some reason, it's like my brain wants to slowly trudge through every single thing every day on a motivated day instead. This is a hard thing to rewire. It's as hard to rewire as any other thing is to rewire. What I've noticed is that when it comes to rewiring things, some things feel really hard to rewire, but the process is always the same. Do you need help getting amped up? Do you need help getting amped up? If you need help getting amped up, what I like to do is I like to look to our cousins, the great apes. And I say, what does a chimpanzee do when it needs to get hyped up? What does a gorilla do when it needs to get hyped up? Because there are physical things that you can do to build up your motivation, to amp you up, that we don't do because of social constructs. We're like, no, I can't pound on my chest. I can't go because people would look at me funny. Movement and sound, exactly. Movement and sound are ways that we can really get ourselves going. Sometimes it's, you know, when we're sitting and thinking that we're just dwelling on things and we may start to spiral. Now, don't get me wrong, I love sitting and thinking. I feel like sitting and thinking is also something that's critical for us to do. This is like the opposite of trying to breathe like a calm person. You got it! You figured it out. You figured it out. Kind of like, if you want to feel more confident, stand like a confident person. And then hold that pose until you start to feel it. I can give you an idea of what might go through your mind. It's like, okay, I'm standing like a confident person. I don't feel confident. I actually feel kind of silly. But then you have the realization, oh, a confident person wouldn't care if they looked silly. So why do I care if I look silly? Aren't I trying to look more confident? Aha! And then you actually start to build some confidence. The brain is smart, but also dumb. Sometimes we can trick it into feeling a certain way by doing stuff. I try to use that to my advantage, and I try to teach people how to do that to their advantage. Like, smiling at people makes me feel happier? Exactly. Just like the brain can't also tell the difference between real laughter, or between fake laughter and humor-stimulated laughter. Brain can't tell the difference. If you start fake laughing, eventually real laughter will take over. Viridian, let's talk about this. Would you be okay with sharing a goal that you want to get accomplished? Like, what I would say is try to set a goal for yourself, something that you need to have done maybe in the next couple days, or something that you'd like to have done within the next couple days, or maybe over the weekend. Just figure out what that first step of that thing is. Just really break it down into a digestible, easily processed, bite-sized bit. What is that next step? It's easier to take a second step after you take the first step. You can't skip that first step. Climbing a mountain starts with one step. I want to start drawing. Do you have the materials that you need to start drawing? Because if you don't have the materials you need to start drawing, then that would be your first step, is to get what I need to be able to do that. You have the materials and the proper app and everything, then I have another step for you. And this step doesn't even involve actually even drawing yet. We're not even there yet. We're not even at the point where it's like, I'm going to be drawing. My next step for you is to find out, when do you want to do that? When will you have some time to sit down and do that? Sometime this afternoon? Tonight after dinner? Sometime this weekend? One of the things that can help us in building motivation is having a deadline. So what we're going to do is we're going to set a deadline for this goal. When do you want to start? I'm gonna be nice. I'm not even gonna say draw me something. I'm not gonna push you in that way even. I could, if you feel like it would help you. I could be like, draw me a picture. I could make you draw me a horse. I made When There Are 15 draw me a horse. It was their homework. We were reconnecting with our inner child, and When There Are 15 said, I used to draw horses when I was a kid. And I said, draw a horse and tell me how it makes you feel. What might also help you to feel motivated in achieving this goal is to think about how you'll feel after you do it. To think about how you feel after you get started. You cannot do things on command. It's too like pressuring. I would never. Yeah, I don't want to trigger your pathological demand avoidance. I wouldn't want to fire off anybody's PDA. You're doing this because you want to do it, and that is a valid reason for doing it. I feel like that is part of the reason why people have such a hard time getting started on stuff, is because it's something that I want to do, but that's not a good enough reason for me. And I'm telling you, it is a good enough reason. What's the point of life if we can't do stuff that we like to do? What's the point of being at this circus if you can't have a little bit of fun? So when do you want to get started? Are you going to try to do it today? Does high-fiving repeatedly count as exercise if I'm sweating? Sure. Let's say yes. I'll allow it. I'll give it to you. I'll allow it. You got the DSA nodders. You want some incentive? Viridian, you want some incentive? If you draw a picture and post it, I will show it to Mike. I will show it to Mike. I have the ability. Mike and I are friends IRL, so I could make him look at it. Or I could not, if that... I could also not do that. We'll get there. We'll work our way up to that. You got other steps before that. I'm getting too far ahead of myself. But anyway, do you think you could do it today? Do you think you could start something today? The only thing you're waiting on is you. You're just waiting on your own permission. You don't need me to tell you to do it. You don't need anybody else to tell you to do it. You just need to give yourself the okay. That's what you're waiting on. I will attempt today. You know, even if it's just getting your materials out, putting them out on the table and having them ready to go, and then just doodling a little bit just to get back into the habit, that counts. That counts. Even if you just draw a little smiley face. Just draw yourself a little smiley face in the corner of the page. Here's another thing that you might find helpful. Visualize yourself having done it. Try to connect with that version of yourself, the version of you that did the thing that you're trying to do. What would it feel like to be that person? I find that that's also a great way to motivate people. The power of your own imagination. This week for homework, I went to the library and picked up a new book for spooky season. I don't go to the library nearly enough anymore. It was so nice to see nothing had changed there. What did you do for your homework? For my homework, I watched an hour-long video on how to make a better city on Cities Skylines 2 because my cities kept failing, and I was like, what am I doing wrong? I need to become a better city planner. So I watched an hour-long tutorial so that I could make a bigger city. And I will tell you that the city of Beaverton is currently thriving. We've got about 40, almost 50,000 people living there now. And we've got a surplus. We're making money. Tyborg's on his 4th city because he's been struggling so much. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot to learn on that game. It's like, this is not my 1st city. This is like my probably like 5th or 6th city. Because I'll start one and then it'll get to a certain point and it's like, oh, I'm losing money. I'm not able to make enough money. And so what I would recommend is just watch a video. Just watch a video. Just let somebody who is an expert at the game share their knowledge with you. There's a certain satisfaction to figuring things out on your own. I get it. I'm one of those types of people. I like to teach myself how to do things. But there's a power in being open to learning things from people who have expertise. There was homework? Yeah, and you did your homework. You went to the fair. That was your assignment. You did it. You got an A. Why are you worried? Anyway. Stretch. Get a little stretch in there. My husband started to wear makeup for his current hobby. I didn't have any problem with it, but then one night, out of nowhere, he said he wanted to dress like a femboy. That caught me off guard, and after that I started to distance myself. I don't know why. Well, maybe we can think about why. Like, sometimes when the person that you enter a relationship with just starts making drastic changes about how they present themselves, how they carry themselves, it can be jarring. It might not feel like this is what I signed up for. And so that's probably why you feel a little bit distant, is because you're just not sure. Or like, where has this been here all the time and I just didn't notice it? Or is it like, did this come out of nowhere, or what happened? Not that what he's doing is wrong, it's just different. And when things change or things are different, it can make us feel a little trepidatious. He ended up coming out as bisexual to me, but he swore he didn't want to change anything, that it was just for his hobby. After that, he started to add more and more to his makeup, and now everything is messing with my head. I love him and I want him to be happy. I made that clear to him already, but I think he's not being completely honest to me since I didn't react properly that night. What can I do now? I need to know what's exactly going on so I can decide if this is a deal breaker to me or not. Every time I try to talk about it, he claims that it's just for his hobby and I shouldn't worry about it. Okay, let's talk about this. Let's try to look at things from his point of view. Sometimes when people start drastically changing themselves in a relationship, they do it in such a way that it is slow and gradual, and it's a way of kind of testing the waters. You know, so it's just a hobby. It's like, well, anything can be a hobby. You know, woodworking, painting, sculpting, knitting, sewing. You know, there are many different types of hobbies. But as far as like, you know, coming out as bisexual and starting to wear a lot of makeup and wanting to dress like a femboy. I'm not going to say that it's not just a hobby. I'm not going to say that. But it does feel like there could be something else going on there, and that this is just his own way of acclimating to it. Because sometimes when we... And I'm not going to say that this is the case here, because I'm just going to try to speak more generally, and I don't want to, make any accusations or make you feel like something's going on, because for all I know, nothing could be going on. And so I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. But this is something that you'll sometimes see in people who might have a difficult time embracing their identity, is that they inch their way into it and then they make justifications for it. And so they'll say things like, oh, it's just for a hobby, you don't have to worry about it. And it's just their way of becoming more comfortable with something that they might feel, like a little bit hesitant or a little bit, maybe scared in some way to embrace. And so I would say you haven't done anything wrong here, because I feel like, just imagine if the situation was reversed. Imagine if you wanted to start, drastically changing the way that you dressed and presented yourself, and, how your husband might respond to that. And so I would just really, this is something that will probably take multiple conversations. You're just going to need to sit down and talk about it, just so you can try to get a better idea of where his head's at. Because the way that this is a relationship, this is a partnership, and the way that you feel is valid. And if it's causing concern for you, then that should be discussed. The fact that you are worried is valid, and you should be able to talk about it. And just to have your worries dismissed in such a way, I would understand why that would be concerning to you. Because you have valid concern, and just to have it waved away with, oh, it's just a hobby, don't worry about it, that's like, that makes you kind of wonder. Like, let me give you a different example, just to maybe kind of understand what I'm trying to get at. Let's say that out of nowhere, I just got really into guns. And I'm like, Casey, I want to go buy another gun. I'm gonna go get 5 guns, and I'm just gonna go to the gun range every day, and I'm just, don't worry though, it's just a hobby. It's a hobby. Like, I'm wearing guns on my shirt. I'm getting posters of guns and I'm putting them up on the wall. I'm going out and I'm buying bullets every week. It's like, don't worry, it's just a hobby. It's like, okay, but this just kind of feels like it's coming out of nowhere. I would say that this is something that, you see in a lot of marriages, is sometimes the person in the marriage, they have these like buried feelings that they want to act on, and then they feel like, I don't want to, scare anybody off. I don't want to upset my partner, and so I will just ease my way into it, and I will try to make them feel better by just saying that they don't need to worry. But the fact that you are worried, the fact that you are concerned is valid, and so I would just sit down and talk about that, and I would explain why you are worried, so that you can talk about it. Because, if this just kind of feels like it's coming out of nowhere, but it also feels like it's slowly ramping up, it's just like, I would just ask him, like, what's your end goal? Like, what is your end goal with this hobby? Like, what is this working up towards? Because the fact that you're even considering, like, this could be a deal breaker, it's like, that's something you definitely need to discuss. But no, you're not wrong to feel the way that you feel, and I'm not even saying that because there's anything inherently wrong with what he's doing. What I'm saying is that the way he's going about it, and the fact that he's making you uncomfortable, and the way that he's just, like, kind of just dismissing your concerns by saying, don't worry. When in the history of ever... Chat, answer this question for me. When in the history of ever has telling someone don't worry ever helped them not worry? Has it ever worked? Has that ever happened? Probably not. Has anyone ever been worried and then they were told don't worry? Did that make you not worry? Probably not. I guess I would just have a conversation with your husband about why it's important for him to do that and why, you know, because it feels like he's building up to something. It feels like he's building up to something. Just the fact that he's, you know, he started off by, it's like, okay, well, it starts off with makeup, and then it's going to start off with, you know, dressing like a femboy, and then it's going to be, oh, well, actually, I'm bisexual. It's like, okay, what are this, the writing is on the wall that this could be leading somewhere. I'm not going to say that it is, but it's giving those indicators, and you have a valid reason to be, you know, concerned about that. Because this isn't what you signed up for. So I would just try to figure that out. I would talk with him, but like, you know, he should be able to ease your worry in a way that actually makes you feel less worried. Because just telling someone don't worry, it's just a hobby. Like, yeah, I was gonna give an example, but it was, we're not gonna go there. We're not gonna go there. But yeah, just, I would talk about it, and I would just try to figure out, you know, what's your end goal here? Like, what is it that we're building up towards? He might not even really know himself, but in talking about it and discussing it, he might be able to get a clearer idea. Because it is building up. And I feel like it's just gonna, it's like, but where is this headed? It's like, maybe he just wants to do drag. Maybe he just wants to be a performer. Maybe he wants to just express himself that way. I'm like, okay, that's fine. But if that's where this is leading up to, I would like to be on board, and I would like to know that so that I don't have to worry that it's actually because of something else. You would like to know where it is headed so that you know that you can support where it's going. Because if it's not going in a place that works for you and works for your relationship, you don't want to lean into it and you don't want to support it. But if it's leading to a place where you're like, okay, yeah, I could support that. It's like, yeah, if my husband wants to dress up in drag and wear makeup and go to the, like, I can support that. It's inherently harmless. There's nothing wrong with that. He just wants to feel beautiful, and that's fine. But we want to make sure that that's where we're going. Like, I want to know where this car is headed before I hop in the passenger seat. Your brother-in-law does that as an outlet to discharge his anxiety. God, you're so cool. Like, there's nothing wrong with feeling beautiful. There's nothing wrong with wanting to feel pretty. But I just want to make sure where this is headed. I would like to be in the loop. And that's fair. You're married. You should be in the loop. I'm tired of micromanaging how I live and act with my small, immediate family. I know they will never embrace me for my true sexual orientation, and it's taken me some time to accept this while being closeted to them. Do you have any advice for navigating these types of relationships with family? Is it understandable that I have the urge to just move away and do my own thing with very little contact with them after graduating? Thank you. Is it understandable? Yes. It's normal and natural to want to be understood and accepted for who you are truly. And to feel like you have to hide an aspect of yourself or to feel like a part of you is wrong is not any way to live. But here's the thing. I would say that this micromanaging is kind of a symptom of anxiety. And so it would make sense that you're probably feeling anxious about how you're able to live and act around your family, because you feel like you have to hide a part of yourself and you have to make sure that you don't present in a certain way. Any advice for navigating these types of relationships with family? I don't want to speak on this as an expert because I have never had to be in that position, but I can offer you some guidance depending on, the things that I've heard from others. If anyone in chat has any experience with, coming out to their family, being worried that they weren't accepting or whatever it may be, feel free to weigh in. I would like to hear from you. That being said, let me weigh in just based on my perspective. I would say that as far as being accepted by your family, you don't really feel that accepted by them now because you aren't able to be your true self. Possibly. And so, I suppose if I was in this situation, I would present my true self to them and then let them adjust. Rather than changing who I am to fit what they expect of me, let me be who I really am and let them adjust to that. I'm not the one who should have to adjust who I am in order to cater to them. I should be able to be who I truly am, and if they accept me, good. If not, maybe they can learn how to. It isn't unheard of that people who are unaccepting of a certain lifestyle or orientation can't learn to view things differently. Sometimes people are actually bigoted up until the point where a member of their family comes out. That does happen. I just feel like being who you truly are in a genuine way is really important for our identity, and it's really important for our mental wellness. I'm also of the mindset that when it comes to dealing with a family, show them who you really are and let them deal with it. Living with the feeling like you've got something to hide isn't really a way to live. But that being said, I'm just speaking from my perspective. Like you are more aware of the dynamic of the situation than I am. In some circumstances, people feel like they would actually be at risk if they were to, share their true identity with their family, and I empathize with that. And in those circumstances, it's like, yeah, it's probably for the best to not, up until the point where you're able to have a stable life outside of the home. But yeah, hopefully you get where I'm coming from. If anybody has any experience with that, feel free to share. But yeah, sometimes in these situations, all you can do is tell people who you truly are and then give them the time that they need to adjust. There are circumstances and there are instances of where people, you know, they do come out to their family and maybe initially they aren't accepting, but then in time they're able to change their view. You know, sometimes when we're dealing with, you know, people who are, you know, our parents, or maybe they're a little bit older, sometimes it just takes a little bit longer for them to adapt to this type of change. But anyway, do what's best for you. Do what allows you to feel like you are the most genuine version of yourself that you can be. You know, don't be disingenuous with yourself. I walk on the field with my imaginary friends. Am I sane? That depends. Do you view having imaginary friends as something sane or not sane? The thing about sanity is, like, I feel like you're only ever as sane as you feel. You're only ever as sane as you feel. Because even people who are sound of reasoning and sound of mind, they can still be made to appear to be insane to those who aren't willing or ready to accept whatever it is that they are trying to explain to them. Just think about Copernicus, and he was like, hey, the Earth actually rotates around the sun, and we're not actually the center of the universe. People didn't handle that well. They weren't ready for it. Is there anything inherently wrong with having an imaginary friend? I don't think so, because, well, as long as you remember that this is all happening inside of my mind, there's nothing wrong with having a friendly persona within your mind that you're able to engage in an inner dialogue with. I don't think that makes you crazy. I feel like I just view it as a different form of a mental exercise. Like, you could have a little version of me, you know, like a little bonsai buddy, a little version of me that hanging around in there, and whenever you're feeling down about yourself, you could just ask him a question. I think imaginary friends are actually very common. Absolutely. Especially when you consider that some like actual friendships between humans might not actually be genuine friendships. They might actually just be transactional or based on, you know, availability. And so in that way, isn't it also an imaginary friendship? It's like you go to school with somebody and you hang out with them and you spend your time with them, but then after school is done, you never talk to them ever again. Like, was that friendship real, or was that friendship just imagined by both of you? Hey. Hey, Ash, how's it going? You trying to join on a Monday? Yeah, I take Mondays off. I take Mondays off because that's Casey's day off, and I like to spend my days off with her. I like to have the same day off as her, which is why that's why I take Mondays off. I'm okay, I guess. I'm in the hospital again. Well, I'm sorry to hear that you're in the hospital, but hopefully you're on the mend. Hopefully things are getting better. Oh. Needed a good neck pop. Needed a good neck stretch. Alright, we're caught up with the questions at the moment. So I wanted to go over something that we talked about a little bit. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. We were talking about biases. We're talking about cognitive biases. And so I wanted to go through a list. I wanted to go over it a little bit more in depth. So here are 13 types of common cognitive biases that may be impairing your judgment. Hello? Oh, why thank you. This looks lovely. Casey brought me some lunch. A piece of sourdough with some cream cheese and prosciutto and a nice salad. Oh, hell yeah. Perfect. I can go over these cognitive biases while I eat. Also, the question box is still open. Still open, so if you have any questions, you can feel free to drop those in. I will get to them when we are finished with this segment here. Food. My body needed a vegetable. It looks like a full dinner. Well, I'm a big boy. All right. Let's go ahead and read through this. Although we like to believe that we're rational and logical, the fact is that we are continually under the influence of cognitive biases. These biases distort our thinking, they influence our beliefs, and they sway the decisions and judgments that people make each and every day. Sometimes these biases are fairly obvious. You might even find that you recognize these tendencies in yourself or in others. In other cases, these biases are so subtle that they are almost impossible to notice. You have food? Mm-hmm. Piece of grilled sourdough. With some, I think this is speck. It's a type of cured meat. It's kind of like prosciutto. And then a salad. Oh, she toasted some Parmesan on there too. I see that. Nice. Nice. Attention is a limited resource. This means we can't possibly evaluate every possible detail and event when forming thoughts and opinions. Because of this, we often rely on mental shortcuts that speed up our ability to make judgments. This can sometimes lead to bias. There are many types of biases, so let's go through them. Ow. This is something important to consider. The reason why we have biases isn't because we're trying to be biased. It's not because we want to be wrong. It's just that our brain likes to save energy. And there's only so much attention that we can give. And so it forms shortcuts. And sometimes these shortcuts can mislead us. There's nothing inherently wrong about our brain wanting to take shortcuts, but I would just recommend to try to be aware of the ways in which your brain's innate preference for taking shortcuts can lead you to be biased in things. This is something that I really wish like people who spread misinformation online or people who promote like harmful ideologies would just sit down and think about for a minute, but anyway, let's talk about them. One of the most common ones, and this is probably one that you might have heard of before, is confirmation bias. Confirmation bias means that if you hear information or you read information and it agrees with what you already believe, you will favor that information because it reinforces what you already believe to be true. So this is often a trap that people fall into when it comes to, politics or, world events or anything like that. It's like, well, if they believe that, the United States is the good guys and they believe that our intervention in other countries is to protect democracy or something, then they're going to buy into information that agrees with that, and they're going to disregard information that goes against it. Part of why this happens is because our brain is trying to save energy. And changing a belief takes energy. It requires an expenditure of energy within your brain, and your brain doesn't like to do that. Your brain likes to save energy. And it's easier and more energy efficient to just reinforce an existing belief than it is to develop a new belief. It's easier to pave over an existing road than it is to make a new road. Because of this type of bias, people can sometimes sit down and listen to the same story and walk away with different interpretations because they will cling to the information within there that agrees with what they believe, and they will also disregard information that goes against it. Things that we can do to help reduce the impact of confirmation bias include being open to hearing others' opinions and specifically looking for or researching opposing views, reading the full article and not just the headlines, questioning the source, and doing the research yourself to see if it is a reliable source. There is no such thing as absolute truth. I don't think that there's any such thing as absolute truth. It's about coming as close as you can to what is real. Okay. So that's confirmation bias. I feel like that was one that's pretty easy to understand, and it's probably one that you have witnessed in your life. You've probably noticed people who do that. But I would just say, try to be aware of the ways in which you do it too. Just make sure what I would say is try to do your due diligence. You know, any strong belief that you have should stand up to scrutiny. You shouldn't be afraid to hear what the opposing side has to say. Now, if you hear what the opposing side has to say and it's disgusting and despicable, then okay, that's, you're probably good to go. Don't worry, I will just spend this ad break taking some bites of my food. We don't need to hear the side of fascism, though. Now, in that, let me just comment on that for a second. From The Art of War by Sun Tzu, there's a quote. Know thyself. No, wait, no, let me start over. Know thy enemy as you know thyself, then you will know victory across 1,000 battles. Knowing who you are and what you're capable of is really important. Understanding your enemy and their motivations is also really important. I need to understand what they believe and what it is that they are trying to accomplish so that I can adequately defeat them. It makes you wise to their tricks. Good evening from Greece. Nicholas, welcome back, buddy. Am I #1 streamer in Greece yet? I hope so. One of these days. One of these days, we'll get there. All right, moving on to the next type of bias, hindsight bias. This is another common one, and this involves the tendency to see events, even random ones, as more predictable than they are. It's also commonly referred to as the I knew it all along phenomenon. Like maybe something breaks and you're like, I knew that was going to happen. It's like, no, you were just worried that it was going to happen, and anxiety likes to try to read the future. Like, oh, I knew this was going to happen. I knew something bad was going to happen. It's like, no, you were worried that it was going to happen, and so it was on your radar. It was something that you were aware it could happen. This is a big one for me. Every person here today has probably done every one of these cognitive biases at least once. Myself included. So it's not about not doing the biases, it's about being more aware when you are biased so that you can work on it. Not #1 in Greece yet. I'm gonna get there. I'm gonna get there. I can see myself becoming really popular in countries that don't have great mental health care systems. I could see that happening, and then I could, maybe one day it's like, oh, I'm going on a European tour. I'm going to Poland, or I'm going to the Philippines. I'm big in the Philippines. So America, as bad as the health, the thing about mental health care in America is that the quality of care is actually really good. We have some of the best mental health care in the world. However, the accessibility is the problem. And so it's not about the level of care that we can provide, even though that does leave us, it does leave us wanting, but I feel like any type of, medical or any type of field you should be encouraged to continue to grow and improve. And so, as far as mental health care goes, United States is up there. It's just that the accessibility is not good. Like, I've worked with therapists who worked for, basically peanuts, and they were still really good therapists. Just because a therapist, sees people who are on Medicaid or who aren't able to pay, and so they have to have like some sort of grant or other type of fund cover that service, it's like they're still providing a really good service. And there's really not that much difference between them and somebody who's charging you $200 an hour. It's a gross misconception that because a therapist charges you more that they must be better. Not true. We got a legislation which is driving mental health care to its worst ever in our country. Let's see how that's an interesting choice. Let's see how that turns out for them. That's an interesting choice. Let's see how that turns out. All right. The hindsight bias. Basically, something happens and you're like, oh, I knew that was going to happen. This could be, insisting that you knew who was going to win a game once it's over, believing that you knew all along who was going to win an election, basically that type of thing. The hindsight bias occurs for a combination of reasons, including our ability to misremember previous predictions. Because going into it, you probably weren't so certain, but after it happens, and it did happen, you're like, oh yeah, I believed the whole time. But like, before you played the game, you were probably like, this could go either way. But then after you win the game, you're like, see, I knew I was gonna win. The effect of this bias is that it causes us to overestimate our ability to predict events. And this can sometimes lead people to take unwise risks. What pops out to me with this example is somebody who drives drunk. They're like, I've driven home drunk countless times. Not me. I'm giving an example here, for God's sakes. Somebody who drives drunk. They're going to be like, well, I made it home. I made it home 100 times driving drunk. And so I'm fine to drive drunk again because I always knew I was going to make it home. Until the time you don't. Until the time you blow through a stop sign and you run into a family of four driving, trying to get home. All right, next up, the anchoring bias. This is what I mentioned yesterday. The anchoring bias is our tendency to be overly influenced by the first piece of information that we hear. So for example, if the first thing that you heard about me was that I'm awesome, it's going to affect your view of me. You're going to be influenced by that piece of information. Or, for example, if the first thing that you learned about me was, oh, he's a huge piece of shit. It's like, well, you're going to be influenced by that because it anchors in. Think about like a food or a place. Those are other good examples of the anchoring bias. Like, let's say you talk to a friend and they just got back from, or like they've been to like a city that you've never been to, and they're like, oh, that city's terrible. Don't ever go there. Like, when you do go there, you're going to probably be like, ugh. You're going to be influenced by that. But if somebody tells you, oh my God, it's so much fun, you gotta go, it's great, you're probably going to have a better time. That's anchoring bias. And it influences the decisions that we make. So I would just say, just try to be mindful of that. The first thing that you learn about something tends to stick, and it tends to be overvalued. And so if I tell you that the restaurant down the street sucks, even though it's got great reviews and I just got unlucky, don't let that influence you. Make up your mind for yourself. Form your own opinion is what I'm trying to say. This is what makes misinformation propaganda so dangerous. When you understand all of these biases, you can really start to see the way that like the right-wing news media machine operates, and it's designed to abuse all of these different types of biases that people have so that it can really hook them with their misinformation. Because we've known about these types of biases for years, and if you think that there aren't institutions that will abuse them in order to influence people, you're wrong. Same with advertising. Exactly. The people who founded the advertising business were psychologists originally. Some psychologists are out there using their powers for evil. All right, the misinformation effect is the tendency for memories to be heavily influenced by things that happened after the actual event itself. A person who witnesses a car accident or a crime might believe that their recollection is crystal clear, but researchers have found that memory is surprisingly susceptible to even very subtle influences. And this is because memory is mostly reconstruction. Our memories aren't as trustworthy as we think they are, especially like eyewitness testimony. Like, you were a witness in like a armed robbery, and somebody comes in and they were like, all right, can you describe the perpetrator to me? And somebody else is describing him. It was like, yeah, he was wearing a red shirt and he had on a blue hat or whatever. And it's like, No, actually, he was wearing these colors. Your mind just can make up details like that. Psychologists were advertisers too. Psychologists basically founded advertising. There was a really prominent researcher. His name was John Watson. And he got fired from the university he worked at because he had an affair with his lab assistant. And so he went into the advertising business. You know all those items that are right next to the checkout? All those potato chips and gum and soda and candy and all that shit? Thank a psychologist. The concept of an impulse buy. That's why they put all that stuff that you're like, ooh, do I need that? Do I need a new lighter? Do I need a new chapstick? Do I need a new phone cord? Do I need a bag of potato chips? Do I need a candy bar? Do I need a soda? Do I need a magazine? Think about how grocery stores are laid out. The Costco chicken effect. You can go to a Costco with the intention of only buying a rotisserie chicken, but they make you walk through 60% of the store. You have to walk past most of the store to get to where the chickens are, so that they increase the likelihood that you'll see something else that you want to buy on the way there. Yep, they'll often put items that most people buy at the back of the store. That you're more likely to walk through the store, buy more stuff. Alright, so we'll kind of breeze past the misinformation effect, but this is basically just the concept that your visual memory or like your recollection of things might not be entirely accurate. Specifically regarding like details, like it's mostly like the detail stuff. You know, what color of a shirt were they wearing? How fast were they going? Just details. Because your brain will just make stuff up. If somebody asks you, like, oh, what color car were they driving? Blue? Like, no, actually it was a white car. This is why siblings have vastly different memories of family events. Yep. This is true. Or you tell your parents something that they did to you when you were a kid, and they're like, I don't remember doing that. They literally might not remember doing it. They just might not remember that it happened. They're like, oh yeah, I remember that time I was 8 and I wanted that toy, and you said no, and then, you know, you grounded me. I still remember that. They're like, I don't fucking remember that. I was talking to Casey's dad about that the other day because he was talking to his mom about some time that he got in trouble as a kid. And he was like, do you remember that? And she was like, no. And I said, to be fair, I got in trouble as a kid across the span of my childhood. Who knows how many times? 300 times, perhaps? My parents had to scold me or discipline me or some reason or another. I'm like, expecting your parents to remember every single time that they disciplined you? That's asking a lot. That's asking, like, can you remember a list of 300 things? Probably not. Also, your parents had other stuff that they were worried about, like paying the bills, making dinner. But when you're a kid, it's like, oh my god, this is the most important thing to me in the entire world. Of course you remember it. So I guess where I'm coming from in that is like, give your parents some grace when it comes to expecting them to remember every single thing that happened to you when you were a kid, because they just probably don't. They just probably don't remember every single thing. You might be able to stir their memory and they might, have some glimpses of it, but who knows? This also means your parents might not be deliberately trying to gaslight you by saying that they don't remember a thing, because they literally might not remember a thing. Unless it's a pretty big thing, they might remember that. Anyway, carrying on. Actor-observer bias. This is the tendency to attribute our actions to external influences and other people's actions to internal ones. For example, I got mad and I was yelling because this thing outside of me made me mad. Whereas if somebody else gets mad and yells and does something, that must be just because that's who they are as a person. So whenever it comes to our behaviors, we tend to assume that it is because of some sort of external influence. You made me mad. Something happened at work. It was traffic. It was all these things. That is why this happened. But whenever other people do things, we tend to assume, oh, that's just who they are. So if you mess up at work, it's like, okay, well, I have excuses. I did that because this happened. If I did bad on the exam, it's because of this reason. But if somebody else did it, it's like, oh, well, they're just lazy, or they're incompetent, or, they're dumb, Does that make sense? This is where empathy really comes into play. If you have a really strong and developed sense of empathy, it's easy to work away from this type of bias. To just understand that if I were that person, I probably would have made the same exact mistake, because, the circumstances and things leading up to it, it probably just was unavoidable. Yeah, this will also help you to develop more understanding of people. Also, it can kind of make you less mean. It can make you a nicer person. Because this type of bias, it tends to just assume the worst of people. It's like, the reason why you made a mistake is because you're a tremendous fuck up, and not because, oh, I didn't even take into consideration that you just had a kid and you were up all night because they were screaming and crying and you haven't been sleeping. That is true. This also helps to prevent us from victim blaming. Next up, the false consensus effect. And this is exactly what it sounds like. People have a tendency to overestimate how much other people agree with their own beliefs, behaviors, attitudes, and values. For example, I remember seeing posts and things like that, like before an election, and they're like, oh yeah, we are the silent majority. We're going to have more votes than ever. It's based on this common misconception that we assume that other people think the same way that we think. especially if they haven't otherwise stated their opinion. If we don't know definitively what it is they believe, we just assume that they probably believe what we believe. I will be enthusiastically voting this November. I will be enthusiastically voting. So, while not only does this cause us to believe that everyone else believes the same thing that we believe and they all agree with us, it can also cause people to overvalue their own opinions. What I believe is really important because so many people believe in it. So many people believe in the cause. Think of like the fucking KKK, like those dumb fucks. They probably are quite partial to this type of bias. They're like, the people agree with us. The people, they're just afraid. They are afraid to stand up. Or some shit like that. You know what I mean? The false consensus effect. I would say that this is the cognitive bias most preferred by racists and bigots. All right, next up, the halo effect. Oh. 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 Do 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 do. I couldn't help myself. In Greece, almost 60% didn't vote in the last 2 elections. That's comparable to what happens in the United States. I think we're lucky to get like above 30-35% of the vote. If you don't vote, you lose your right to complain. I feel like if you don't vote in an election, you lose any privilege to talk about politics until you do have the opportunity to vote. All right, the halo effect. This is the tendency for an initial impression of a person to influence what we think of them overall. So this is kind of similar to that anchoring bias, but it's a little bit different. This is also known as the physical attractiveness stereotype, or the what is beautiful is good principle. We are either influenced by or use the halo to influence others almost every day. For example, thinking people who are good-looking are also smarter, kinder, and funnier than less attractive people. Believing that products marketed by attractive people are also more valuable. Thinking that a political candidate who is confident must also be intelligent and competent. A factor that influences this halo effect is our tendency to want to be correct. If our initial impression of someone was positive, we want to look for proof that our assessment was accurate. It also helps people avoiding experiencing cognitive dissonance, which involves holding contradictory beliefs. I feel like this is part of the reason why so many people were riding the Trump train, is just because he was confident. Confidence can really get you places. Because so many people lack in confidence, whenever they see somebody who presents as confident, they grapple onto it and they want to ride those coattails. All right. Next up, the self-serving bias. This is a tendency for people a tendency for people tend to give themselves credit for successes but lay the blame for failure on outside causes. So if you did well, that's because I'm the best. I'm so good and so smart and I know what I'm doing. But if things turned out bad, it was like, I was just unlucky, or it was unfair, it was rigged against me. We blame it on the circumstances. This is part of the reason why people can sometimes have a hard time reviewing their defeats or their failures. Those are things you need to learn from so that you can do better. You don't want to just write it off as, oh, well, it was because of this thing that was outside of my control that things didn't go my way. That sounds like actor-observer. Good thinking. It is. You'll notice that this type of bias operates in the same way as that actor-observer event. If I make a mistake, it's like, oh, well, it's because, I just haven't been sleeping. I've been sick. Whereas if somebody else makes a mistake, it's like, well, it's because you're a tremendous fuck-up. It's because you're incompetent. It works in a similar way as that, the self-serving bias. If we win, it was because we are good. We're skilled. But if we lose, it was like, well, the other guy cheated. Or, they, misled me, or they tricked me, or whatever it might be. They played dirty. Sounds like somebody with an external locus of control. Sounds like somebody who took a psychology course in college. The external locus of control. It's that belief that it's something outside of you that has control over the way that you think and respond and act. It's something outside of you versus the internal locus of control, which is what you really want to emphasize. The way in which I am in control of myself. Nope, just been here too long. You've been here long enough, you could probably, you could probably have the credits for an undergrad. How long you been here? If you hit the 4-year mark, you get an honorary bachelor's in psychology. If you subscribe to this stream for 4 years, you are legally able to put on your resume that you studied psychology at the Brain Domain for 4 years. Honestly, that's a steal. That's a steal. It's cool because you never got the chance to go to college. I teach you all the kind of stuff that you would learn in a college program. Like, a lot of the material I go over, like, this is stuff that, you wouldn't even talk about as far as psychology up until the point where you're in college. Psychology in high school was cool, but it was basically just like the very entry-level stuff. Like, this is who Sigmund Freud is. This is what conditioning is. This is why optical illusions happen. It's like that kind of stuff. All right, next up. We're getting through them. We're almost all the way through. Do you feel like you've learned something? I hope so. Which bias would it be if you went through all of these biases and you felt like, I don't have any of those? Which bias would that be? That's your question. Let's talk about the next one, the availability heuristic. And this is the tendency to estimate the probability of something happening based on how many examples readily come to mind. The name is kind of confusing because you don't normally hear the word heuristic thrown around, but basically this just means that if you spend your weekend researching plane crashes, the next time you get on a plane, you're probably going to be a little bit more concerned that the plane is going to crash. This is one of the things that Fox News really likes to take advantage of. They will give you plenty of examples of things that have happened. Be like, oh, somebody who hopped the border, they committed a crime, and they'll tell you all about every single instance of every single crime that has happened by somebody who is undocumented. And it makes you feel like, oh my God, undocumented people are terrible because they're committing so much crime. But that's not really what's happening, because there are far more crimes happening by people who were born here. There are far more crimes happening by people who look just like you and me, and they're happening all over the place. But they want you to fear immigrants, and they want you to fear people who don't look like us, and so they give you lots of examples about all of the things that have happened, even though statistically it's a drop in the bucket. That's a really good example of the way that this cognitive bias is taken advantage of by outlets such as Fox News. So maybe at Thanksgiving you could have your racist uncle look up what this is. You're like, hey, uncle, have you ever heard of the availability heuristic? Oh, it's really interesting. You should read about it. An example of this could be like people who smoke cigarettes. Like if you know a bunch of people who have died from smoking cigarettes, you're like, oh yeah, cigarettes are fucking terrible. But on the other hand, is like maybe you know people who lived to be 87 and they were smoking since they were 12, and you're like, well, cigarettes couldn't be that bad. It's just about how many people do you know, or how many instances can you think of? Because if you can think of several examples of a thing, you assume that it's happening much more than it actually is. That one, it's got a kind of a confusing name, but it's pretty easy to understand. The optimism bias. This is also a type of bias that we can have. I would also say that the opposite type of bias, like a pessimism bias, can also exist. So I don't even want to speak because they don't even really mention the opposite of this. So because I hate to besmirch optimism. I hate to besmirch optimism because it's something that we drastically need more of. And so I would say this can go either way. You can either be overly optimistic or you can be overly pessimistic. We can believe that certain things won't affect us, or we can feel like certain things are definitely, absolutely going to happen. The thing is it's like, where is the happy medium? I don't know, just probably somewhere in between. I would say you don't have to expect the worst, but it doesn't hurt to be prepared for it just in case it does happen. And I feel like there's nothing wrong with expecting or hoping that good things happen. I believe that, believing in your own ability to adapt to circumstances is much more important than being able to predict the future. Just trusting your own ability to deal with whatever comes your way. All right, so that was the cognitive biases. There are more types of cognitive biases. You could probably go on and come up with all sorts of different ones, but these are some of the most common, and this is just a sample of them. You've probably noticed some of them in your life. You've probably also known people who might have been engaging in these types of biases. Fox News loves to take it, like any major news outlet. Don't get me wrong. I've been really hitting Fox News because they are very driven by fear. They are constantly telling you, you need to be afraid of this today. And that's reckless, to put it kindly. Alrighty, we got that finished up. Let's take a look. We got a couple questions that popped up in the box, so we're gonna go ahead and get to those. If you dropped a question in the box, thank you for your patience. We're gonna get to those now. I just wanted to... We were talking about cognitive biases yesterday, and I wanted to go over it more in depth. So... yeah. Thank you. Any subscribers? Any gifters before I get to these questions? I'm just saying, it's September and your boy's hungry. I got a big appetite. Let me finish this salad real quick so that I'm not munching while answering these questions. This will give you time to hit that subscribe button or hit that gift a sub button. I love a good salad. Honestly, like eating a salad just kind of makes me feel clean inside. It's hard to really describe. It just feel like I can feel my gut microbiome going, "Thank you." Okay. We're Gucci. All right. Let's party on, party people. Got some questions to get through. How do you make friends after the age of 30? I got more isolated after joining the workforce. This is a great question. Making friends I feel like it's harder than people think it is. And I feel like it's for the same reason that people think that it might be harder to like grow a plant. Like if you want to grow tomatoes and you want tomatoes, it's like, well, first off you got to start by planting a seed, and then you have to tend to it and nurture it and pay attention to it and give it what it needs, and then it will come to fruition. Friendship is the same thing. I feel like when we're kids, making friends is really easy. Like, oh, you like fire trucks? I love fire trucks. Boom, best friends. The fundamental process, though, hasn't really changed much as far as that regard. It's really easy to make friends if you have mutual interests. And so one of the best ways that I can recommend for making friends is to find a group. You know, sometimes there are community groups that meet up. Sometimes there are events that people will host, or there will be festivals or whatever. Sometimes there are specifically like special interest shops, like game stores, hobby shops, those types of things. If you're interested and passionate in something, you can go to those places and talk to people about it there. And that's a great way to initiate a friendship. That's a great way to start planting the seeds of friendship. Sometimes communities will even have like social meetups for people. Like people will go there just with the intention of like being social and meeting people. Not specifically to like try to find a dating partner or anything like that. It's just something to be social. So the thing about making friends is that if you want to make friends, you gotta go find them. They're not gonna come to you. You gotta go out and look for them. And they're out there waiting for you. If you want to make friends, be friendly. Like, hey, how's it going? Oh, I like those shoes. Well, that's a cool shirt. Like, oh, I see you've got such and such on your shirt. I love that. I'm a big fan of that. Hi, my name is blank. What's your name? Local game shops are great for this. A lot of my friends make new friends at game shops. Like, I've had friends who, as adults, have moved across the country for work or whatever it might be. They make a new friend group by going to the local game shops and by meeting people there. You don't have to even have a particular game that you're interested in, because the thing about game shops is that there's a game that everybody could like. There's a game for you somewhere in that game shop. There's a game that you would enjoy. Unless you're just the type of person who just hates games altogether, in which case maybe we'll have to try something different for you. But even just going there and practicing, I would say game shops are a great place to actually go and practice socializing. You could just go there and say, oh, hey, I was just hanging around the area and I saw the store and I decided to come in and see what's going on. You want to know my secret? My secret is to treat everyone I meet as if they are already my friend. They just don't know it yet. I find that just by treating somebody as if they are already your friend, it helps them to, let their guard down. Because one of the barriers towards making friends is that people will have their guard up. Because you are an unknown variable. They don't know what your intentions are. So I find that just by being friendly and polite and complimentary, it can get you a long way. Sadly, the closest game shops here are an hour away. The closer ones have shut down. Sounds like you're gonna have to decide something else. You're gonna have to start a local runners club or something. Or join a local runners club. I don't know. If you're interested in something, there will probably, like if you live in a big enough city, there is probably already a club dedicated to that thing. So find out whatever it is you're interested in and go check out the clubs that are dedicated to that type of thing. Here's another option for you. Do some volunteering. Go volunteer at a food bank or an animal shelter and just make friends with the people who are also volunteering there. Spending time volunteering is a great way to make friends. Also, you know that they're probably going to be pretty nice people because they spend their free time volunteering, and I'm like, that's probably a pretty good person to have a friend. A lot of people, as adults, form their friend groups around work. And that can work. I'm not going to say that it doesn't work, but for a lot of people, it's the same thing as like being friends with people just because you go to school together. It's like you spend a lot of time together during the day, so it's just like these are the people you feel like you have to select from. But it's okay to have hobbies and interests outside of work, and you can go interact with people that you don't have to breathe the same air in an office all day with. So that's my recommendation for making friends after the age of 30. Other things that could be helpful: meeting people online. While it is valid, I feel like, online friendships are valid. Having friends that you can actually spend time with in person is also really important. So I would say interact with people online and just be friendly with them and just use that as a sort of practice for socializing in real life. Also, if you want to make friends, if you want to make friends, any volunteers? Any volunteers? I've probably got some people in chat right now who would be your friend. Any volunteers? Show of hands? Don't leave me hanging. Oh, see, there you go. I was going to say don't leave me hanging, but you were already on it. All right. Like, come on, don't embarrass me. But we're good. Also, if you like hanging out here and you like the vibes here, I would say to check out the Discord as well. I'm going to plug the Discord. We got a nice, positive and supportive community here in the Discord. And that's the plug. That's the plug. All right. Next up. I've realized that I'm bad at showing affection. Like my mom says love you and I just say nothing or good, like in a joking way. And like all my friends say I love you and I love you too all the time, and I don't understand how they can just say it like it's nothing. I also don't really do hugs and stuff. You need a hug. You need a hug. Hugs are essential for our survival. There's something that's like biologically imprinted on us. We need hugs. Alright, so here's the thing. Your awareness that you are bad at showing affection, and these are your words, not mine. Your awareness is what is going to help you to change this behavior, if it's something that you want to change. And I would say it's worth changing. It's worth changing, because a life without affection is rather bland. So I would just say, practice showing more affection. And if I had to take a guess, I would say that it's probably tied into some sort of feeling of vulnerability. Because that is most often the reason why we have a hard time showing affection, is because it makes us feel vulnerable. To express ourselves in such a way, or to open up our heart in such a way. But if you want to know more love in your life, put more love out there. Do you want to know more love? Do you want more love in your life? Yes or no? If you say no, I don't believe you. Who would ever turn down more love? Well, I guess a person who feels like they are undeserving of love would turn down more love, but then again, I would just try to correct you on that assumption because you are deserving of love. So... did you know that you can hug yourself? You can hug yourself and it can still be meaningful to you? Hug yourself as if you were hugging somebody that you deeply loved. Think about how happy it would make your mom if you said, "I love you too." Just think about how happy it would make her. And then you can be happy because she's happy. Hugs give me anxiety. I don't know why. I don't know, maybe they make you feel trapped or squished or confined or something. Maybe they make you feel restrained. But I would say the best types of hugs are those that are mutual, where it is two people voluntarily hugging each other and not one person forcing a hug on someone else, because at that point it's basically just a grapple. You're basically just being held in a wrestling move. So I would say if hugs give you anxiety, the next time you are to hug somebody, hug them like you mean it. I'm not much of a hugger either. We're gonna make a hug review yet. I'm sorry, but if any of us meet up in person, I am giving you a hug, consensually. But I don't think you'd turn me down because I'm great at hugging. I'm a fantastic hugger. I'm probably the best hugger I've ever met. I'm gonna hug you and you're gonna like it. I hug all my friends. I hug all my friends goodbye. I say I love you and stuff to my cat, but that's it. Give your cat a hug. Just try to be open to the idea that hugging is more important than just the act as it appears in and of itself. It is something that is biologically imprinted on us to be important. And we can recognize that by just looking at stuff that, like, great apes do. Like, great apes will, like, cuddle and hug because it's important. It's an act of socialization. It's a way that we share love. It's a way to communicate to somebody, I am here, I care, I am touching you, but I am not going to hurt you. Maybe sometimes if we have been touched in such ways that make us feel like we are afraid that we are going to be hurt, we might feel anxious about hugging. I would say it's okay to change your mind about that. I mean, I'll respect people's opinion if they don't want to be hugged or they don't want, they don't like hugs, but I'm just saying, you can change that. And I feel like there's no need to miss out on that level of, in that way of, like, communicating love and affection. But no, I'm a hugger. I hug all my friends. YouTube link. I'm sorry, I just found this so funny. Come here. Come here. Come here. Get in here. What if I did this? Oh, sorry, I'm not trying to show you my gross hand. Let me do it with my other hand. The reason why I say this about hugging is because there are people in your life that one day you are going to wish that you could hug them again. I've talked to a lot of people who have lost a loved one, like a parent or something. There's just nothing I want more in life than a hug from my mom or from my brother or sister or whoever. See, those of you who have lost somebody, you get where I'm coming from. I feel like hugging is also a great way to cherish the people that you have in your life because we realize we're only going to have them for so long. And we want them to know what they mean to us. And I feel like hugging is a way that we can communicate that. All right, I'm done talking about hugging, though. Let's check out this YouTube link.
Come on, shake your body, baby, do that conga. No, you can't control yourself any longer. Come on, shake your body, baby, do that conga. No, you can't control yourself any longer.
Let me just say, this is one of the greatest, bits for, like, a song. Just, like, nothing can quite be amped up like Conga by Gloria Estefan. Just that little bit.
Come on, shake your body, baby, do that conga. No, you can't control yourself any longer. Come on, shake your body, baby, do that conga. No, you can't control yourself any longer.
It's true, I can't control myself any longer. I have to do that conga. So we are aware that bees do dance to communicate, but have you ever thought that humans also dance to communicate? Think about it. We do it too. Why do we usually avoid our tasks? Because I know what is the right thing to do for me, but I keep avoiding it. Some external factors and overthinking make it worse. Were you here for the bias presentation? Were you here for that bias presentation? The part where we were like, oh, well, if something happens to me or if I don't do a thing, it's because of external factors. Ignore external factors. Act in spite of external factors. Life throws challenges at you and it throws hurdles at you because you're meant to hop over them. You're meant to leap over that shit. This is when my confidence is decreasing. How do I maintain consistency? Please help. All right. First off, it makes sense that your confidence would be decreasing because whenever we feel less capable or less able to do the things that we need to do, it makes us feel less confident. And so to counteract that and to feel more confident, the solution would be, I need to do stuff. So we need to push back against that overthinking. We need to work around the external factors. I would suggest, if you have a list of things that you're trying to do, a list of goals, like I need to fix this thing, I need to call this person back, I need to schedule this thing, I need to do this thing for work or this thing for school, I need to clean this, whatever. It's a whole list of things. That's when overthinking comes into play, and that's when we start to feel overwhelmed and incapable. So my recommendation for you is to pick one of those things. and to figure out what the first step in that goal is. If it helps to pick something that's easier, pick something that's easier. Pick something easy off of your to-do list. It's like, oh, your dishes need to be done? First step, go over to the sink. Second step, soap it up. When you start to achieve these little steps, and this is why it's really important to break our goals down into small steps, is because it gives us momentum and it works to increase our confidence. And it frees us from that cycle of overthinking. So we need to spend less time thinking and more time doing. So pick one, pick a goal. And if you have a hard time picking a goal, make picking a goal your goal. And then anytime you achieve a step in your goal, take a moment to just give yourself a pat on the back and say, hey, I did it. Good job. It's part of what keeps our momentum up, is we need to be our own cheerleader. How do you remove bad habits and addictions like watching porn, or more pleasurable habits or addictions? To keep it short and sweet, replace it with something else. When you feel like doing that thing, do something different instead. And this is because this is how a lot of addictions actually work. Like, a person might be addicted to one thing, and then most often what happens is they replace that addiction with a different addiction. So you might have somebody who was addicted to alcohol and they were able to quit alcohol, but they still are wired for addiction, and so they become addicted to something else. They become addicted to corn, they become addicted to gambling, they become addicted to whatever it might be. And so just have an understanding that with addiction, you need to replace that behavior. Because if you were to just get rid of that behavior, you're just going to find yourself with free time, and that free time is just going to lead you to thinking about going back into your old habits. I would recommend picking something healthy to replace it with. A lot of people replace it with exercise, or, they replace it with some other type of hobby or some other type of activity. It's something that's a good and healthy use of your time, so that you can start to wire your brain to feel rewarded. And now here's the thing. When it comes to changing an addiction, you have to rewire your brain so that it feels that same sense of reward in the new activity. And that can take a little bit of time to do. Like if you're going to replace a corn addiction with, I'm going to become addicted to, practicing art. It's like it might take a little while for those switches to flip over. But it can happen. You just gotta be consistent with it. Also, if you relapse and you fall back into old behaviors, that's part of the process. Most people who are working themselves out of an addiction will relapse. It's something like 60% or more will have at least one relapse. So if you aren't able to just quit something the first time you try, that's not unusual. You can become addicted to self-improvement. That's a good one. I'm not good at using words, so like when I'm feeling things and stuff, I just make noises. That was me answering your questions, but in noises. Alright, let's think about your brain for a second. The part of your brain that feels things and stuff is a different part of your brain than the part of your brain that puts things and stuff into words. And so part of the reason why you might not be good at using words is because there isn't a strong connection between that part of your brain and the part of your brain that processes your feelings. And so the only way to get better at it would be to practice it. And there are different ways that you can do that. You could practice by writing things down. Writing down how you feel. For a lot of people, it's easier to do that than to put it into words verbally. Because as it turns out, the part of your brain that can write stuff down is a separate and distinct part of your brain from the part of your brain that forms words and speaks. So it's all about making new connections in your brain. And if you want to make new connections in your brain, you just have to practice it. And there are ways to do that. But I would say start off with writing things down. And then once you write them down, read them out loud. You don't have to read them to anybody, you could just read them to yourself. But this will help you start to form those connections between how is it the part of your brain that's like, how am I feeling right now? What's going on right now? And the other parts of your brain that are responsible for putting things into words. The parts of your brain that produce speech, that make sounds. Does that make sense? These are different parts of your brain that are doing these different things, and you need to strengthen the connection between them. And that just takes time, and that just takes practice. But it is possible. It can be done. Kind of like how people can learn to see with their tongue. Isn't that mind-blowing? We watched a video yesterday. There is a device that you put on your tongue, and it gives you little like electrical impulses. It kind of tingles, and it creates visualization in your brain. The little electrical thing is hooked up to a camera on a set of glasses, and it transmits that information onto your tongue, and then your brain processes it as visual information. Because we don't see with our eyes, we see with our brain. Itchy. Come on, shake your body. Do that conga. Shake your body, baby. Do that conga. No, you can't control yourself any longer. Great. Great. I mean, there are worse songs to have stuck in your head, but now that one is stuck in my head. Alrighty. Well, how are we feeling? right, everybody. We're all caught up on the questions. I think we're going to be winding down. It's our last chance to subscribe. Any takers? Any takers? One of these days it'll work. I'm just terrible at shilling. It's September. Get those subs in while you can. You need a glass of water? Get one. Shilling works, but it sucks. Chat, this content is made possible through the support of viewers like you. It is through your viewing and subscribing to this channel that I'm able to bring this free mental health care to people who need it. So consider supporting today. Thank you. Did that work? It was very PBS of me.
This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
I need to recreate that. I think that's what I need to do. I need to recreate the PBS commercial, and then I could just pop it up over my stream whenever I need to shill. I could just put this commercial up. I think that's what I need to do. I'll add it to my to-do list. Put it on the list. Put it on the to-do list. Alrighty, everybody. Have a great night. Have a great weekend. We'll see you all next time. Until we meet again. Until we meet again. Later, Gators. Bye-bye. Until next time.